Welcome everybody to our Ask the Organizer event for October, Photo Organizing Basics. My name is Whitney Zeigler. I'm the founder and a certified professional organizer with Big Rocks Organizing. I'm so excited to have some of our team members here and some special guests. So I'll just introduce some of our team really quickly. We have Jean, who is our executive assistant. Karin, who wrote our blog this month on photo organizing basics, and Karin is an assistant professional organizer with our team. And then we have Jess Cavanes, who's our operations manager. Thanks for being here today, Jess. And our special guests today are Rachel and Morgan. Is it Hagar or Hagar?
Hagar.
Hagar, thank you. They are the family archivists. They moved here from California to Lake Oswego to the Portland area not too long ago. And they are certified photo organizers. So they're going to do a better introduction and more in-depth introduction to us, about their background. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So this is a really participatory event. We hope that you brought your burning questions about photo organizing, whether it's, you have a little bit of experience or haven't, you've got 12,000 photos and you don't know where to start, like you're in the right place. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and Morgan to get us started. Thanks for being here, you two.
My pleasure. First of all, Whitney, thank you for organizing this, inviting us to participate. As you said, my name is Rachel. This is my husband, Morgan, and we are the family archivists. I have a master's degree in library and archival science, and Morgan has over 20 years experience as a professional photographer and retoucher. And we decided to start this company to help people get their photographic life in order. And so that's everything from their analog, prints, photograph slides, VHS, all the way through their digital, everything they're taking on their phone and their cloud. And so our goal is to help families organize, preserve, and share their memories with whoever they want to.
And you two met in photography school, I understand?
Yes, met in photography school in the early 2000s. Morgan's a practicing photographer. I was a practicing photographer a little bit before I switched fields.
Very cool. And your two kids are also involved in the family business?
Yeah, so
when they want to be.
Yeah, we have 10-year-old twins, and so very nice being able to run a family business, have that freedom, to kind of be flexible and work with them. And yes, they like to think they're part of the company too.
Yeah, they love helping.
Well, thank you again for being here today. So I'm curious, does anybody have a burning question that they want to kick things off with today? Okay, well, I'm going to ask Karin, who is from our team, to maybe share a little bit about your experience in working with your grandma to organize her photos and writing our blog for this month. And then I would love it, Rachel and Morgan, if you could, maybe kind of interject and share your experience too, as it's relevant. That would be really great.
Yeah. Hi. I when we started talking about this photo organizing, I was thinking about my grandma, who has been going through boxes and boxes and boxes of photos from her whole life. My grandfather, who passed away a few years ago, was very into photography, really liked taking pictures. And so she's just had a lot to go through. And it was kind of one of the things that she saved for last after she was sorting out lots of other things in her house. So I think it's kind of a little bit of a treat, but also kind of a daunting task. And yeah, it was interesting to talk to her. I'd been there on and off while she was working on it, but to actually ask more specific questions and how she feels about how, I guess, what she values and how that changes what she wants to keep and what she doesn't want to keep. And yeah. Did I answer your question? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Did this experience bring you and your grandma closer?
Yeah, I think it definitely did. It was special to hear her. I mean, I think when you have something that you can, that's something you can point to and talk about, rather than just opening up and asking really deep questions, both in the form of an interview, being able to say like, I'm interviewing you, so that's why I'm asking these questions. And also like having photographs as a topic of something to kind of like delve into is nice. It kind of lets you have a different type of conversation than maybe we're both jokesters, so we just end up joking a lot when we talk usually. So it was nice to have a little bit more of like a serious conversation and hear her talk about my grandpa and how she misses him and how she also wants to keep the photos of the things that they cared about together and not necessarily just all the photos of the things that he cared about that were kind of like his solo passions. And that was really interesting to kind of talk through that with her, of how she doesn't feel like she has to keep all of his sunset photos and all of his like car show photos, because it wasn't something that they did together, but there were lots of things that they did do together, traveling and spending time with family. And those are the ones that she wants to keep because they feel she has more of a connection to him through those.
Thank you. It's really interesting how people decide to organize and curate photos. And Morgan and Rachel, I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit. And then we do have some questions that have come in the chat as well.
Sure. I was going to say, Karin, I was curious to know what your grandmother's goal was for the project. Because when we're working with clients, one thing we always start with is, where do you want to end up, right? We want to create a backwards roadmap. And so are you looking to right size your collection and get rid of things? Are you looking to right size and digitize so then things can now be digital and shared? Are you looking for long-term preservation and making things that are going to be safe and accessible many generations down the road? It may be a combination of all of those things. And so we always think it's really important when starting a photo organizing project to think a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish. We talk about the ABCs of photo organizing, and the A's are your best stories, your favorites, like if you had a digital album, the ones you put a little heart on. The B's are those backup, the supporting stories, the ones that tell the rest of the story and fill in the moment. And then the C's are the ones you ultimately could probably get rid of, your blurries, your duplicates, offshots, things like that. But it helps people to sort of start to put them into categories, because it can be very overwhelming, especially if you don't know why you're going into the project, right? A lot of people just feel the sense that they have to do it, but they haven't even thought about why they're doing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think for her, she had so many that she wasn't really able to enjoy them and wanted to just kind of like have a manageable amount that like she'd be able to flip through and look at and really enjoy, without, sorting through all of those maybe C tier photos that are in between all the other gems. Yeah.
Your grandma also decided to mail some photos to friends and family.
Yeah, she has been like kind of sorting by person, and so some of them, she was saying like when she sees something that she gets really excited about, she'll like send it to the person right away so that they have it. And some of her friends and family members have like just not had, for various reasons, not had all of their photos, like they got lost or damaged. And so she's been really enjoying like being able to send them out. And her process didn't include any digitization because she really likes to like hold the photo and look at it, and she doesn't want to see it on a screen. But yeah, I think that's another, I'd be interested to hear you all talk more about the digital side of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of that, we have a question in the chat from Carrie S. Is there a software app that you recommend using for photo organization?
So there's a lot of them. I guess if Carrie, if you're there and willing to expand on that, what aspects? I see there's another question where someone's talking about duplicates, because there are programs that will help you sort your photographs. There are programs that will help you eliminate your duplicates. There were programs that will help you put things into albums. Everything from free to things with a high price point. And so it's really going to sort of vary on what you're trying to accomplish. Carrie, would you be willing to share a little bit more about what you're trying to do?
Yeah, sure. I just went on a almost month-long trip, and I have a bazillion photos that I took, and I'm dreading the fact that I'm going to need to edit them in some way. And I know I have a bunch of not good photos that I would be in category C, but I'm just wondering, I guess a couple questions, wondering what is the best way to edit through at least the first go round? And then secondly, I'm always torn, and the purpose of me, or one of the end goals of me taking these trip photos is to be able to show some of them. And I'm always torn about whether I want to show them in a sequential fashion by place or date versus by subject, whether I want to show people, whether I want to show food or etc. So I'm just wondering if there is a basic lower cost way to both edit and organize photos. I don't know if that helps.
Well, there's a few. Are you using anything at all right now to look at your photographs?
I have access to a program, and it's not photograph or photo related, but Irfan View. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Okay.
My one other question before I'm going to answer this for you is, do you have an iPhone or an Android, and do you work on a Mac or PC?
All right. Sorry, I said app, which implies phone. No, I want to do this on my PC, and it is not, I'm not in the Apple world.
Okay, not in the Apple. So to start with, there are several apps out there, and we can get them into the chat or get them for a follow-up email. One I'm thinking of off the top of my head is called Good Ones. And so there's several apps now that are made for easy editing. Kind of going off of, this is a silly analogy, but online dating, and when you swipe left and right, but where you get your photograph and you can basically swipe photos into best, rest, or trash. So as you're going through them, you can say, oh, this is a best. This is maybe one I want to sit and rest and think about. This was one that's trash. And so one, that's a quick way when you're just kind of sitting, let's say, waiting for a doctor's appointment or doing something, and you have 10 minutes, you can sit and do an edit on your phone, and it helps you kind of group those. And so there's several other apps like that we can get the name of. Then there would be software that you can get for your computer.
Yeah, software for PC would be like Adobe makes a lot of products. So Adobe Bridge and Lightroom, those come with a price tag, a subscription. There's also Milio, which we're actually just starting to play with, but it has, I believe it has a free version,
It has a free
as well as a version you can pay for that's got more bells and whistles. And all of these go both ways between Mac and PC. They also have apps for your telephone. So if you want to look at stuff on your phone while, even though it's on your machine, you can do that. Those are the big ones. There's lots of little ones out there that probably do a pretty good job, but the bigger ones have better support communities, which is important to have, so that you're not relying on the company to give you information. You can go to a community of people that know what they're talking about, and they can help you. So
for instance, when we're working on a program called Bridge, I have it set up where on my screen where I could see about 20 photographs at the same time. And then you can go through and just select the ones that you want to edit to either move into let's say you're going with the ABC method, you can kind of move things into folders as you're looking at them. But what you're looking for is you want to be able to look at a group of photographs at the same time so that you pair them on screen. Which one are we all looking? Is the sunlight the best? And so there's several different programs that will allow you to kind of look at your images in like a grid format, to then be able to select the ones that you like best.
Okay, and does it matter? I didn't say this, but I probably should have. Does it matter your answers in terms of, because I still actually had a camera that I used. So I took, that was the other complicating thing. I took photos on my camera, I took photos on my phone, and now I have them everywhere.
So if we were working, the way we work with our clients is we will first bring everything together, typically onto an external hard drive. Again, if we're working with someone else. If you were our client, what we would do is we would have you download the images off your phone, whether you're doing it through Amazon or cloud or whatever service you're using. We'd have you take your camera card, right, and download that. And we pull it all together in a hard drive, organize it, and then upload it back to wherever it needs to go.
Okay.
We're using a program called Lightroom, but again, that's for something like Adobe Bridge or Milio, or there's photo organizing software that allows you to do things like make albums, add album names, add file names, all that kind of stuff that you're talking about.
it's also write in the chat
Sorry.
about mechanic, and that's another good one.
I wrote that. That's me.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have a recommendation about photo organizing programs, or did you just say?
So ones that we put some in the chat, Mylio,
Okay.
Adobe Bridge, Photo Mechanic. Those are all kind of ones that have free versions or low cost versions. Mylio, there's a free as well as there's a paid where you get some more bells and whistles, you know, sort of depending on what you want to be able to do.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Rachel and Morgan, the apps you're talking about, are these ones that you would use to just organize things, or would you permanently store your digital photographs in these apps as well?
Well, these are more geared for organizing. Mylio offers in their paid service, they offer a way that you can back up your photographs within their,
It's called a vault.
yeah, it's their vault that they use within their software. Besides that, you can back up with other companies that are strictly a backup. So
Forever, someone mentioned in the chat.
Forever would be one it's different than a backup service. It operates a little bit differently, but a backup service would be more like Backblaze or something like that, where they just offer space on the cloud for you to store stuff. Forever is a little differently because you pay for space and that lasts forever. That space doesn't go away. Whatever you put in there lasts forever. So there's a difference between backing up something and then archiving something forever. So it's
And so
a small difference, but it is.
as far as Whitney, you asked where your photos live. Ideally, they're going to live on your computer or an external hard drive. We recommend a 3-2-1 system. So that's 3 copies, 2 different types of media, 1 offsite or online, you know, where like Forever, for example, would be an offsite one. And so the reason we recommend that is that, so again, our goal is to get you an organized hub. We like to do chronological by months. That's going to live on your computer or an external hard drive. You can have another copy of that on another hard drive that's in a safe deposit box or someone else's house, just as your safety. That can also then be synced to your cloud, and you can also back it up to something like Forever. So these programs are what you're going to use. You can think about them like your cooking tools. Your hard drive is your refrigerator. That's where you're storing your food, right? That's where you're storing your pictures. Mylio, Photo Mechanic, those are the tools you're going to use to interact with your photographs, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I want to know if someone had asked about duplicates. And there is a program we like a lot called Photo Sweeper. To be honest, I'm trying to remember if there's a price for that. I do believe it does cost. There might be a free version, but there are several different, if you look up duplicate cleaner software, and depending on the bells and whistles and what it has, some will just compare for like files. In Photo Sweeper, you can actually start to compare series of shots and partial shots and set up different parameters. You know, save the larger file, not the smaller file. And so there is a lot of software that can help you deduplicate your photographic collection as well.
I do want to say it's deduplicating the Apple Photos, their latest version has a deduplicating software built into it. So
if you're an Apple Photos user.
yeah, so it's coming around to the big services where that's going to be offered as part of their software package. And so
my question in duplicates was a little bit oblique. And so what happened was that I took possession of literally tens of thousands of photos from my parents' house because my mother took everything in color, black and white slides forever and had duplicates of everything. And they went on trips and had everything. And so at some point I started, and then I kept finding things. So then I would take a USB and I would copy it over and I'd add stuff to it. And then I'd give it to cousin X, and then I'd add or subtract stuff so it wasn't. And so then I'd make a copy of that. So now I have 12 copies of things in different ways and in an organizational system that I meant to be a place for me to decopy. It got worse. So clearly I had a problem. And I have no idea how to get started. It's all over the place. It's on USBs, it's on, hard drives, external hard drives. Yeah. And by the way, most people don't care in my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's typically the one historian, archivist in the family who cares. So, so if we were taking on as a project, what we would do is we would first gather everything up. So we would get the hard drives, the USBs, and as much as possible, try to get everything onto one hard drive. So can you pull all the USBs over as much as possible? Can you get everything into one master kind of file? Then there is a program we really like called Big Mean Machine or Big Mean Folder Machine. I believe it's $25. It's not a free one. And if you wanted to connect offline, I could give you, there's a little bit of like, you can set some things up, but what Big Mean Folder Machine does is it will move everything into a folder structure of your choice, including it will auto resolve your duplicates. And so what that means, if there's two files with the same name, it's going to add like _1 after it so that it will allow the two copies to go into one file. So basically, if it was me, what I would try to do is bring everything together, then run deduplicating software on that. The deduplicating software, you can set parameters to tell it to take the bigger file, the better file, and it will do a lot of this auto marking for you. And I would do first a sweep like that. And that should get you to a pretty good starting point to then be able to manually work through it a little bit. But I think your best bet, you could manually put everything into folders or into one folder, but Big Mean Folder Machine, something like that, I think would be really helpful to help you.
That makes sense to me. So let me make sure I understand. Big Mean Folder Machine, $25 for a physical unit or a software unit?
Software
Unit that I install on a humongous internal or external drive, and then I run it, and then it goes through and puts different names on all of the photos so that I can make a choice from there. Is that correct?
Yes. Pretty much. Let me clarify a little. So what Big Mean Folder Machine will do is it splits your files into what are called hierarchies. So our hierarchy would be, we have the year 2020, underneath it, we have January 2020, February 2020. We label things 2020-01, 2020-02, 2020-03, because that allows it to stay in order in a computer if you start doing numbers differently. What we can do with Big Mean Folder Machine is what I would do is I would tell it to sort all of your digital photos based on their date of creation as best as we can have. And so then it would put it into folders. It would sort it all out into, 2000, January 2000, February 2000. While it's doing that, it's going to auto resolve those duplicates. And so it's going to rename them for you. And so then from there, you can run the duplicate software, and then it should start to recognize those duplicates. It's a bit of a process. And I should say too, we do also offer coaching. So we do these projects entirely for people. We also do offer coaching for anyone who wants to take on a project themselves, but wants some individual help with it. Because especially with all the technology, it can be a little intimidating and overwhelming at times.
And you could probably coach people anywhere in the world, I'm assuming,
Yes,
right?
yes. Coach via Zoom, and that way we can share screens. We can work together to help someone, because we can give general advice, but it's going to really depend on.
Every project is so different.
Yeah.
Like everyone's is a little bit different than everybody else's, and so it's helpful to be able to talk to them. And
this is also assuming that the files on the USB and the hard drive, that the date was set correctly on the camera, that, like we're going off of a lot of built-in metadata. So this is going with the assumption that these programs can read that. If they can't, then we'll talk about the next steps, which is a little bit more manual. But the first hope is always to have the computer do some of the work for you.
Claire, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, so so super helpful. Thank you so much, because sometimes it's hard to know where to start. So what I've heard you say is you kind of approach these projects from a chronological perspective versus like, oh, I'm going to organize kind of by person type thing. Is it so really always approach from chronology?
well, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say digitally, yes. I find digitally, just because the built-in metadata, having it chronologically allows you to really go from there. Organizing analog materials, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be chronological.
I mean, when we work with clients, the first thing we determine is what they want to do with all their stuff. And so that could, set the path to where we're going to go or how we're going to do it. But generally speaking, we do things chronologically, by year, because it's photography's been kind of this, stamp in time for a certain event or a person or something like that. And so keeping in that tradition, unless of course, there are genealogists that need to have everything done by person instead of by time. And so, we work with people to generally in what they need.
So digitally, the reason we like to organize into folders chronologically is because digitally we have a lot of other metadata, right? We can use facial recognition, geography tagging, keywording. For analog, I say you go with what feels right to you. You might want your boxes by person. You might want your boxes by season. Some people are like, it's too hard to figure out months, but I can do winter, spring, summer, and fall. And then at least I know when I'm looking for Halloween, that's gonna be in a fall box. When I'm looking for camping, that's gonna be in a summer box. And so as far as what we call analog organizing your prints and slides, that's really going to be what makes sense to you, because then what we're going to recommend is that you make a little index to put on the front of the box. So inside the box, you have cards, right? Either their years or names or events or whatever it is. And then you have a corresponding index on the front so you can compare them. It's not quite a set in stone, because with analog, we're not relying on the metadata of the computer, whereas when we have digital, we can kind of play around with things a little bit more.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then last question while I'm off mute. For those analog, for the actual touchy-feely photos, is there a certain archival brand that you really recommend, or are they all created equal, or how does that work?
Well, there's certain things to look for, but generally speaking, you want it to say that it's archival. There are some that say that they have no acid, they're acid free or something like that. Those are okay, but they don't generally stand the test of time. And so it's best to, there are companies that sell strictly archival stuff. So I came out of photography, so one's called Print File. They sell a lot of things for holding pictures and negatives. They're Rachel's typing in a whole bunch of Gaylor. Archival Methods is one. And so there's they all kind of sell the same stuff. But it's a little more expensive, but it's worth having.
Yeah, and again, they sell boxes, they sell albums, they sell it to fit every shape and size. Yeah. Someone else had mentioned, so I'll go back to this too, is that you don't necessarily have to keep everything, right? So yes, especially when you're downsizing, consolidating to long-term archival storage preservation, it can be more expensive. So it is a good time to go through and pull out for sure those C's, the duplicate copies, the ones that you're never going to keep. But it is a chance to sit and look at your A's and B's and kind of think about what is really important for you to store. Having said that, one box will hold, thousands of photographs.
Pictures.
Yeah. Once you're taking them out of albums and they're just in a box with a little card lining them, you really think, same with slides. You take them out of the pages or the carousels, there's boxes that fit thousands and thousands of slides. So you can really condense it down.
Yeah. And they sell, these things. I know that Archival Methods sells a kit that you can buy for photography that comes with areas for slides and for prints and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so they got a lot of good stuff to offer.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions from Elizabeth in the chat, kind of along these same lines of working with analog photos. Closet full of boxes of analog photos, sorted by the year for the most part, but nothing else. How does she begin to organize and curate them? Should she go from beginning in the 1980s or move backwards from 2021 looking back? She feels very daunted by it. And her goal is that she wants to enlarge and frame maybe 6 to 12 of the best photos. And the rest, she just wants to save them archivally by trips or by children.
Okay, well, it sounds like they want to separate things by trips and children, which would be good.
And she also wrote or chronologically.
Or chronologically. So, it's you can save them by person, by child, chronologically, you know, or by the trip where you were. It really kind of
So I'm
depends.
going to go slightly different view of this. So one, I would say is first start off with, is there a table you can set up and leave things set out at for a decent amount of time where it won't get disrupted? Because it's really hard to take it out and put it back and take it out and put it back. It sounds like you have a really good start by the fact that they're mostly by years. So I would start with a year. Doesn't matter which way, front or back, wherever you feel more inspired. If you're going to be able to work through more recent photos easier, because there's not as much sentimentality about going back and looking at your children's baby photos, I'd maybe start with whatever's quickest. And I would say, just like when you're doing any other task that feels overwhelming, set a timer. Say, I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes. Again, I like the ABC method because I think that's a good way. You could take a year and then just start piles for these are my favorites. These are I think I might like these, but I'm not positive. These are the ones I can eventually get rid of, and work for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you can do on one box and see where you get. And unfortunately, it's just going to be a matter of doing it in pieces and what feels manageable. I think sometimes you'll get on a roll and you'll want to keep going. Sometimes you might get really frustrated by a certain pile. And so I think just like organizing any other space in your home, you have to allow for sort of the emotional, like Whitney, I don't know if you want to talk to what I'm saying, but, or any other tips as far as when you're approaching a daunting task is just to try and break it up into chunks.
All I have to say is amen to that. That's what we do as organizers, is take a big overwhelming task and help people break it down so that it feels more manageable. And it sounds like that's your method as well, which is fantastic.
But I think that ABC categories would be a good way to start, because you're going, this is my immediate gut reaction. This is a favorite. This is one I like. I don't need this one.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe just try with 3 piles and see how that
Yeah,
works.
start if you're going to edit the photos down, start with the easy ones. Like in the 80s and 90s, it came in this nice little package with the prints and the negatives and everything, and you could just real quickly, you know, look at the ones you want, maybe save the negatives, and then just, you know, pile C the rest. You know, so it's trying to make life easy before it gets really hard. So, you know, get on a roll, do the easy stuff first.
Do you recommend holding on to the negatives?
If you're going to digitize,
Yeah.
we recommend digitizing from negatives if possible. You're just always going to get a better file.
Yeah.
So if you have those and you're thinking about going photo digitization, I'd for sure save those.
And if it's a special roll of film, special vacation, celebration, whatever, and you want to keep it as a recording, like a wedding or a, you know, I don't know, great birthday party or something like that, you can keep the negatives and a couple of the prints, and then get the rest. You can get rid of the rest of the prints because you have the negatives and they're smaller to keep. You can just keep them in a flat envelope. You know, it's a little easier to manage.
So rather than keeping all 24 or 36 photographs from a birthday party, you keep 5 and the roll of negatives. So they're there as your backup in case you ever want to go back and print them.
It's the negative, the best quality print that you have. It's the original. So,
and again, the archival storage methods all have great things to store both negatives and photographs and kind of keep that all together and keep it consolidated.
So we have some additional questions in the chat. One from Vanessa reads, do you know of an app, Android or PC, that recognizes faces and helps sort by faces into collections?
So Apple will do that. Google Photos will do that.
Amazon
Photos will do it.
Mylio does that. Adobe Lightroom does that. A lot of the major applications these days have facial recognition and geotagging
built in. I don't know of one that's like an app that specifically does facial recognition, but most of them are pretty, most of the photo organizing software has that built in. I will say there's definitely a process of training the AI. We have fraternal twins. They look nothing alike. One is olive and one is fair. And facial recognition still has trouble because they keep seeing 2 babies in one photo and like, or back and forth. And so there is some training involved in the facial recognition. But so just know it's not a perfect fix, but it definitely does help you get there.
It's at the very beginning, it could be pretty ridiculous, but you know, you keep working with it and it gets better every time you do.
Wonderful. I think, I was going to say, Morgan, you mentioned when we originally chatted that you also use AI to touch up or to edit photos. Is that right?
So Adobe Photoshop, everybody's heard that name before. Their latest release has a generative AI. So you can select an area on a picture and type in, clean it up, make it better, restore it, whatever. And it will start to do it automatically. Like any new piece of software or anything like that, it's not perfect. And so you got to work within its parameters, but it's getting really good, really fast. And so if you're into restoration work, you have some old photographs and you scan them and you want to make them pretty because they're tore up or whatever, you should take a look at it, but it's still new. It's,
But it's really, especially if you have those older family photographs where there's like a crease across the whole photograph or a line, it does really well with repairing those. So I saw someone asked if photo boxes or albums are better. Again, preference, we feel like photo boxes store a bit more, but you're not as likely to sit and flip through them. You got to kind of rifle through them. Our one caveat with albums is we always recommend people take things out of the sticky back albums from the 80s and 90s. Those are terrible for the archival preservation of photographs. If they're pocket albums or photo corner albums, those are fine. And so really it's just a preference, again, a matter of how you're going to use them, how much storage you have. But if you're just talking about you're going to be digitizing and now these prints are just going in a closet somewhere for posterity's sake, I think boxes, work better because you can fit more.
Another question in the chat. Do you have suggestions for a reasonable service or way to convert 16mm reels from an old movie camera? She just found a bunch of old family movies, but doesn't know if they're worth converting.
So we do that service.
Yeah, we do that. We offer that. We can digitize video cassettes, so VCR, mini DV, whatever cassette you have, and then we can also do film reels, 8mm, Super 8, 60mm.
Unfortunately, you won't know until you convert it. Obviously, 8mm, 60mm, you're not going to have sound with that. We're converting VHS and DVD. Sound will come along with that. So one, going into it, know that you're just getting visual images. And so unfortunately, there's no way for us to know what's going to be on it until we do it. But we absolutely have that capability.
It's for reels like that, it's a good idea to get them digitized because a lot of reels these days are starting to show signs that they're deteriorating. Because, in the 70s and 60s, when it was popular, they would send away and get back Kodak in these boxes. You would have your reel inside the box. Well, as it turns out, those boxes are terrible for film. They didn't really notice that back then. And so we have clients that have kept in the boxes and you get them and the films, it's starting to degrade. So if you have them and you're curious about it at all, I would definitely send it in. It's there's nothing as cool as looking at an old 60mm movie that,
And having said that, we always tell people too, as much as we don't want to think about this, VHS tapes are all 30, 40 years old at this point.
Yeah.
And that is also about the lifetime on a VHS tape. So VHS tapes do also degrade over time, which is not something.
Magnetic tape, so they go away after a while.
Okay, so I'm looking here. A way to clean sticky off from the old photo album. So first off, if you're having trouble getting them off, unwaxed dental floss, you can slide it under
get it under a corner of one of them. You can kind of work your way. You got to be really careful because if you just yank it, you might cut through the picture. But you can just kind of work it through really quick, and it'll kind of pop off.
And then as far as
to get the sticky off,
what's the name of that? I have to send that. But there is a product that I can't remember the name of right now.
There are products you can apply to it to get it off, but at the same time, it's tough because you can destroy the picture in a different way doing that. And so it's usually when you bring them out, and if it's sticky, if you can digitize it, it's the best thing. If you can easily get the sticky stuff off the back, that's great. But if not, you try and store it as well as you can.
You also can use there's like leaf paper that goes in between the photographs. So at least if you're taking them out of the albums, it won't stick to other albums. So at least getting it off will help, and then putting something in between it so it doesn't stick to the other photographs.
Lauren, I saw you come off mute. Did you want to add something to that?
Oh, I was wondering if the product, is it called Undo?
Yes, that's it.
That's it.
Maybe with
Thank
a UNDU or
Yes, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's Undo, but it's not spelled correctly.
I read about it.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with it, but it does work.
Yeah.
Use a Q-tip, be very gentle.
Okay.
Thank you so
Um,
much. Karen. We'll try to put that in the chat and find it. Question for you too, from Elizabeth. Do you also digitize negatives for people?
Yes.
Negative slides, anything. I should mention too is we do a lot of what's called camera scanning. So we talk about digitizing or scanning. A lot of times we're not actually putting it through a scanner. So for negatives, slides, photographs that are maybe mounted, your photographs you inherited from your family that came on boards, we're actually going to photograph that.
Anything. So prints that are 2 inches by 8 by 10, from
Anything
tiny
from
2
2
inches to 8 by 10 size. If they're prints and they're in good shape, we try to put them through a scanning machine, just because it's quicker and easier. If it's negatives, slides, anything over 8 by 10, anything that's damaged, anything that I don't know,
Is unusually
yeah,
shaped,
for whatever reason, it's not
three-dimensional.
normal. We use a photographic process to digitize those, and so
It gives you the best quality.
Yeah.
It allows us to light and photo and focus in, and it gives you a large file to work from.
yeah, it's the best method of duplicating something.
And
think
so
when-
along with that,
Oh, so you said it was like Getty image quality that you can do, very high level quality. You can also do
Yes.
3D items like photograph trophies or other memorabilia.
Correct. Yeah, we try and work within the same guidelines as Getty does and other museums like that. We don't use the cameras that they use because they're just gigantic cameras. They're wonderful and they do beautiful work, but they're like 150, 200 megapixel cameras. Mine's 50 megapixels, and that's more than anyone will ever need. So, we have, I come out of commercial product photography. And so the equipment that I have, I'm lucky that the equipment I have will do a fantastic job for the work that we do.
and to say that too, people are mentioning their box of photographs. I know last month's we watched was about right-sizing sentimental papers. I just wanted to mention too is that we can also scan things like greeting cards, family recipes, newsletters, any of that, scrapbooks. So scrapbooks, we can actually photograph the entire page. So you're making a digital copy of the same book.
Yeah.
So really anything that goes along these lines of physical memorabilia.
So in like sports memorabilia or, really anything you can collect can be digitized as well.
Morgan, audio files from old small tape recorders. Do we do?
Micro cassette recorders, I'm assuming they mean like your dictaphone, like when I was in college, you put the recorder on the desk kind of thing.
So Lori, you had asked about, do you know what kind of old small tape recorders those are?
So I'm trying to remember, a friend of mine, when they were going through some things, they found an audio file from their parents' wedding. And this would have been from the late 40s, I think 47. So, and it was, I don't even remember because we were going through all sorts of stuff. So I can ask her, but I found a service online and it was incredibly expensive, and they were pretty clear that from that age, it was probably going to be crappy. So
I mean,
I don't think we
it's
would
not
have
going to
to
be
be
the best
for that.
recording. Is it what medium?
yeah,
is it?
I'm sorry. They said it was a little old tape recorder. What did they have in the 40s or the 50s? Might have been 50s. Actually, it might have been early 50s.
40s and 50s is mostly reel to reel as far as audio.
It would have been reel to reel.
So they must have had it digitized at some point, or played, and then a microphone was stuck, and so they could record it on something else.
I mean,
Yeah.
just as far as logistics, like I doubt that's something we'd be able to handle. We can handle basically anything there. We have a collection of old camcorders, old DVR players, because what we're doing is hooking up the old hardware through cables to our new computers. So something from the 40s.
Can I take this offline with you then?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's talk offline about that.
Okay.
All
right.
Morgan, so someone asked.
If you're photographing photos, what megapixels do you want to use versus if you scan on a printer scanner? With the quality difference. So what you want to do is look at the resolution. So my camera is, this isn't absolutely correct, but it's like 6,000 by 4,000 pixels or something like that. Flatbed scanners they go up to maybe 4,000. I'd have to look. And when they get to the point where they're scanning something really small to a very big file, it's interpolating a lot of the data. And so it doesn't come across quite as cleanly. If you photograph it, it's actually an image. And so the gradations and stuff like that, it just, the quality becomes better.
Well, I think they're asking, so scanning, we're doing 600 DPI.
Mhm.
So for scanning, we scan at 600 DPI. That typically will allow someone to blow up a really large size file.
Yeah, I
Typically,
mean,
people don't need more than 600 DPI. You're going to start to deal with really, really large files.
right.
And so when you're photographing, is it the equivalent, like what file size are you going for the equivalent kind of DPI?
Well,
Sorry, DPI is dots per inch.
yeah, you kind of go for the biggest you can, while keeping in mind the file size that you can, deal with. If you have a particular scanner in mind, you can compare it to the pixels of a camera. I mean, I would have to look at compare two different pieces of equipment, I guess, to answer that question properly. But as far as the quality difference, flatbed scanning is kind of old technology. It is still very useful. We have a flatbed scanner that I use sometimes if I need it. But with when you're photographing it with a camera, you have much more control over it. The quality is better. The files are cleaner usually, and depending on the camera you use, you could have better resolution for the file. So it's one of those things where the technology kind of grows, and you can, with the flatbed technology, you can stick with it, but it has its limitations. There's no depth of field, so you can't scan anything that's,
Not perfectly flat.
not 3 dimensions. You
But
know what I
again-
mean? So it's, if you have a print that unfortunately is like curved, and you're not be able to flatten it out without destroying the emulsion on the surface, which, I mean, that from the 1970s,
So,
you could really ruin a print doing that. It would be better to be able to either open it just a little bit and then photograph it, or with a flatbed printer, you'd have to kind of smash it down flat. And so I'm thinking of, if I find a photo 4x6 that I want framed, would it be better to have it photograph it or scan it into enlarge? Well, again, it's to answer that question, it's hard because it's kind of it would be the same thing, but it depends on how you want the picture in the end.
how large you want the picture.
Yeah,
If you're just giving us one because you want to blow it up, we would probably just photograph it. If someone was giving us a huge stack of 4x6s, we usually would use a scanner for that, just for
And those scans would be
perfectly good.
perfectly good for any print size, probably up to, I would imagine, you could probably blow something up to 16 by 20. And you have to remember that these files that you're using, especially through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, cameras and film weren't tack sharp. Like the images aren't perfect, everything's in focus and perfectly tack
So you could
sharp. So
blow
when
it
you
up.
blow it up, you're not losing anything. If you take a digital camera these days and you start blowing something up from a small file, you'll be able to tell because it gets real pixelated and it just looks yucky. But if you scan it at a proper resolution or photograph it at a proper resolution, it'll look fine either way being printed out. So it's to say one thing's better than the other is kind of like, I prefer apples to oranges. They'll both fill you up and do the same job.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to answer.
Oh, thank you both. There's a couple things I thought of that haven't come up yet. One
Mhm.
is when we're working with analog photos, should we be wearing something on our hands?
So I have a kit here that I prepared for this. So you should always use gloves, cotton gloves.
You want to keep your oils off
Yeah,
the
or fancier gloves. If I have a lot of work to do, I use nitrile plastic gloves. Those work. I would not use latex or plastic or anything like that because they leave a film or a powder or something like that on whatever you touch. I have an air blower, like a squeezable air blower
get dust
that-
off of things.
to dust things off. Not the cans of air that you can buy at the store. That's not a good idea because
Those are
it
chemicals.
uses a propellant. So that stuff that like shoots out on the things, even if it says that it doesn't use that, it still uses something like that and it'll attach to the picture. If you're looking at pictures and they're dirty, and you can't, if you're wearing a glove, obviously you're going to be wearing a glove, and you can't just simply wipe it off. You could use a brush,
Makeup brush.
well, an anti-static brush, because otherwise the static electricity, you're just drawing dust onto the print. So an anti-static brush, and you have to remember that these things need to stay clean, just like wearing a glove. So if you end up touching the bristles, like I bought one of these and my daughter came in and took it out of the thing and started going, oh, this feels so great, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't use that anymore because now it's like wiping the picture on her face. So you have to be careful with that. Pencil, yeah. Marking things, the best idea is always just a pencil.
No ink.
No ink. If you are going to do ink, they have certain pens that are specifically made for archival work. This is a Pigma Micron. It's a series of pens. They make really small tips for artists and stuff like that. That'll work, but generally speaking, archivists
Only work in pencil.
only work in pencil.
And also along with that, you only want photographs slides. So paper clips, rubber bands, staples, tape, anything that can deteriorate over time, you want to remove if at all possible. So unrubber band, unpaper clip, unstaple, all those things can rust, break down. You know what happens to old rubber bands over time.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. My mother-in-law just took a Sharpie and wrote on the front of photos. She was 103.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah.
People used to do that. Really old-fashioned photographs have it like carved into the, you know, like the photographers actually used to carve out the emulsion and write messages right into the photograph. So maybe she's just, you know,
Yeah.
new trendsetter.
You might be. One other thing that I thought about we haven't talked about yet is ownership of photos. And sometimes when we're storing things in the cloud, depending on the service we're using, maybe, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but like the fine print, who then owns the photograph? Sometimes when we upload them to different sites too, the photos might get compressed and then we can't enlarge them later and have them still be clear. So I don't know if you two feel comfortable maybe speaking to this a little bit.
Well, I mean, as far as services go, you need to pay attention to how they work and what they do with your pictures. And almost all of them now have some section on their website devoted to this kind of thing, because photographers, once these services started coming, photographers like Instagram, photographers would give them their pictures and then their pictures would show up in advertisements completely unrelated to them. So, you know, they're most of that is now taken care of. Like there aren't going to be any services really that steal your photos to do stuff with them. That's pretty much done. As far as if you upload a photograph, then you want to re-download it, what happens to that photograph? It also depends. That has changed over the years. It used to be that Facebook would take your picture, strip every single piece of metadata off, and then compress it to fit on their web page. And so then when you want to go back and get it, it's this tiny little thing that has no information attached to it. And so services, you know, just go to the frequently asked questions in websites, in whatever service you're interested in using, and read about what they do with the pictures. They are usually pretty upfront about what they do with it, because they have to be these days.
And that's where we always like to let people know too, that services like Amazon, Google, even Apple iCloud, those are not true.
They're not backup.
They're not
services.
backup services. That is something, your photographs can go away at some point. Let's say Google decides they no longer want to offer Google Photos. It's unlikely, but that is a possibility. That's where things like Forever, which got mentioned before, there's another one called, is it permanence.org?
Permanent.org is another one that works. It's a 501c3, but it works a lot like Forever, where they sell you internet space under the guise of a permanent sort of thing. And someone else in the chat started talking about Forever and listed that, you know, you have to pass it on to someone and there needs to be an address, and that's all true. You need to read the fine print of how it works.
And having said that, that's actually also nowadays recommended for your Google, your Amazon, your iCloud, I forget the name of it, I'll look it up. It's a legacy something or other, because that has become a big issue, is when people pass, and if they haven't designated someone to take on their iCloud, their Amazon, their Google, no one has access to that. And so it's something people don't know, that you could set up someone else to be your proxy, so to speak. But so yeah, there's a lot of new information privacy things that you have to think about and look into when you're storing your photographs, for sure.
We are actually out of time. This conversation really flew by, and just so appreciate you two coming and sharing your expertise, and Karin as well for writing our blog this month and bringing your expertise. Next month, Wednesday, November 1st from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific, we're going to be talking about how to get organized for the ultimate life transition. So we have a special guest, estate planning attorney and elder law attorney, Jennifer Trundy from Rose Elder Law. So we'll be excited to welcome her. If we have questions for you two, Rachel and Morgan, and for Karin, can we ask you offline? Like, we'll share your
Absolutely. I'm going to put my email address in the chat, as well as our website. And then also, we just wanted to also offer a 15% discount to everyone who participated today. So if anyone is interested in using our services, you know, we would be happy to
mention this.
And
That is very generous of you, and thank you for that. And thank you again for being here. And we will send out a follow-up email too, because we had 42 people registered. So we'll send up an email with all of the links. And to those who are here today, just everything that was mentioned in the chat, we'll send out links to everybody. So don't worry about frantically trying to copy things down.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.